Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Humans and Wildlife again. And so I'm here, Christian Sasse, with my co-host, Giorgia Auteri. Giorgia, what are we going to talk about today?
Hi, Christian, and hi, everyone online. So yeah, today we're going to talk about growing trees in arid regions and areas that don't have a lot of rainfall. And it's kind of like up to debate. You know, sometimes these areas are low rainfall because of climate change, or sometimes they've historically been that way for a long time. But regardless, if you're interested in trying to grow trees in that area, we're in an area like that, we're going to talk about it. And to help us talk about that, we had a guest. His name was David Kennett, and he founded this project called Aurea, which is based in Australia. And so because he is based in Australia with such a tremendous time difference, we have a little bit of an unusual interview format this show. Christian, do you want to explain what we did?
Yes, of course, because of the time difference. And I know that all too well in Australia, right? I mean, at the moment, the local time in Australia should be, let me just work this out. It's about 6 a.m. actually. So it's very early. So Georgia actually interviewed him last night, Australian time, isn't it? So yes.
Yeah, last night Australian time, this morning my time. So I will, as a preface, it was early this morning for me, earlier than I normally would be up or in the office even. So I actually had a bit of like not a kerfuffle exactly, but a bit of a conflict with the janitors because they were still cleaning. And I was like, oh, I need someplace where are you done vacuuming? Like, where can I go that I'm not going to be disturbed? And so they were very, very sweet. And they showed me one of the conference rooms. They were like, we vacuumed this one and we'll just like wipe it down real quick. And then they let me use that for the interview. So yeah, it was 7 in the morning, my time, and 7 p.m., I believe, at David Kennett's time.
Very good. Well, let's just quickly share an image here of the deserts of the world, because this is really what it's about. So about 33% or a third of the planet is actually covered with desert, and the largest of which you can see here in the middle, of course, is the Sahara, as most of you know, if you exclude the North and the South Pole, so the Arctic and Antarctic. If you call them deserts, of course, they are much bigger, right? So you have the Sahara, and then also the Gobi Desert, that's Mongolia and China. Then, of course, in Australia, that's the big topic here that covers central Australia, is another very, very big one. And then, of course, here in the Arabian Peninsula is a big one. You've got the Negev up here and so on. So there, and of course, you have smaller deserts too, but those are the biggest deserts in the world. And yeah, some of them, especially the Sahara and the Gobi Desert, are a lot in talk. Can we actually change all that to forest? That's maybe a little bit too crude, but that's part of the topic today. So.
Yeah, and I just want to say welcome to everyone who's tuning in. Frankman, Gentleman Ghost, Zach, and I missed somebody. Oh, no, I don't think I did. Yes, it's great to see everybody. And we don't have Facebook comments coming in.
I don't know if
that's a coincidence. I'm just seeing that we don't have any comments from Facebook.
Well, it shouldn't be. Let me just whilst you talk, let me just check if
maybe save to, or make sure to share the event to Facebook too. Yeah.
1 second. I thought I did. Let me just check. Georgia,
if you're on Facebook, say hello to us. Let us know. Hi, David Dunn. It's good to see you, to hear from you. Yeah, so maybe, Christian, while you're doing that, I will actually share my screen and we'll introduce David Kennett as he was interviewed this morning. Hi, David Howden.
And you're right. For some reason, it's not broadcasting on Facebook, and I don't know why. Sorry about that.
Very
sorry about that. I don't know why.
Interesting. Well, I'll start this little clip. Luckily, we have some pre-recorded interview clips from our guest this morning, and so I can start one of those clips, and then maybe we can investigate together. Okay, so All right. So let me share my screen. And I'm in the office where, thank goodness, I have two screens, which makes it easier. And okay, this is very like anal of me, but I'm wearing a sweater now, and I wasn't this morning. But like, I feel like it's just gonna be extra funny if I take off the sweater, and then I can match this morning how I was dressed. Okay, so here I am this morning interviewing David Kennett. This is the playing of the recording. David, thank you so much for joining us. So our guest today is David Kennett. He initiated the Aurea project, which seeks to, your main goal is reforestation. And you are based in Australia, although you also do work in other parts of the world, especially Nepal. So David, I wonder if you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself and Aurea, just the basics.
Right. Well, I was made redundant back in 1998, and I was put on work experience at a government department that deals with water, basically. It's called Water and Rivers Commission. Well, it was in those days. Anyway, I learned there that in order to address salinity, which is a major problem here in Western Australia, but it's also a major problem in India and America, and but a lot of people aren't aware of the magnitude of these problems. But here it is absolutely dramatic. Anyway, I had the good fortune to meet a forester back in about 1998, and I told, while I was at Water and Rivers Commission, I was told that all the experts were saying that, and these are in government departments and the Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, are all saying that farmers will have to revegetate 80% of their cleared land to address salinity. So I just thought, that is crazy. Who can afford the cost of revegetating 80% of their land, or also taking 80% of their income producing land out of short-term or quick rotation agriculture for producing income? So I came up with the concept that perhaps if we planted trees above underground streams, which I could identify by divining, then maybe there's a chance that we could lower the water tables. Well, this was actually flawed, but I met this forester who was keen on the concept, and we went and saw different plantations. And during these visits, I would say to him, Charles, why is it there's just a very small percentage of the trees that in your plantations that are significantly better than the other? And when I say significantly, we're talking about some trees up to 20 years that are 50 centimeters in diameter, where all the rest are just about 15 centimeters in diameter. And he said, David, if you can find out the reason, you'll be worth $1 million. So I'm sorry, I have a quick. So I think that's kind of the end of that clip. I didn't do a great job editing these clips down, but yeah. So we hear a lot of interesting things in that first clip with David. One of the things that is really interesting about him is he is someone who is really sort of a self-taught, self-made man when it comes to reforestation efforts. And he has a lot of, you heard him mention divining. So he was like really into like divining to find underground water sources in Australia. And so it's very interesting to have a guest like that, who certainly he has some beliefs that are like off the, not in line with common scientific thought. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. But that was one of the refreshing things, I guess, is like so much of on-the-ground conservation is not being done by trained scientists, by trained foresters. It really is just like people seeing a need or seeing something that's impractical and trying to correct it, trying to help people make a living by growing trees on their property, or helping to do like carbon sequestration through growing these trees. So David was a really interesting person to talk to for those reasons. Oh, and I see we do have Facebook comments coming in now. Thank you so much, James Bourne, for testing that.
Giorgia, that's quite interesting. I mean, you would think that someone who put so much effort into turning the desert into forest would get a lot of support. Do you have any idea why that wouldn't be so?
Well, I don't have a great idea. I think I could guess though. And a little bit is that I'm not Australian. I'm not very familiar with the political climate there. So he has had more support in Nepal, and he has he'll talk more about this, but David has a bunch of property in Australia that he is reforesting, and then he's done some work in Nepal with sharing some of his more like methodology and thought process around reforestation there. But he did mention that forestry has a very bad reputation in Australia because the trees often don't perform well when you try to plant them. And I mean, replanting efforts in the US, at least, it's the same. You hire these crews to go out there and plant trees. They're not trained in planting trees, and most of the trees die. Usually this is after like clear cutting events or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And so you can imagine it's probably even worse in an arid environment like Australia, where you have to be very careful with how you're planting the trees and where you're planting them. So I wanted to share a couple more clips real quick, just sort of getting into the introduction with him. So this is I wish they didn't start playing automatically. So this is a clip with him. We always like to ask people where the name of their organization came from. And Aurea, I was like, where did you get this name from? And this is what he had to say.
The word Aurea, which is the name of my property and my business, is actually the word Australia, from which SALT has been removed. And so I say Aurea is Australia of the future when salt has been removed. That is my
And the joke there with like salt being removed, that's actually like in arid environments, you often have like a salt accumulation in the soil. So the soils are very salty. And if you had trouble following along with what he said, I actually made this little thing so we could say, so he said, okay, Aurea is Australia without the salt. So we're going to do it together. S.
Okay, I get it.
A. L. T.
That's
Aurea.
clever. That's clever.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. That's the best.
I feel so prepared. I'm like, look at this demonstration I made. Or it's up here. Look at this demonstration. Look what I've done. Brilliant.
Cool.
Oh, and we have a comment from James Bourne. I heard that China is trying to reforest in the Gobi as well. Yes.
We're going to jump onto that very soon.
Yeah, should we, or Christian, do you want to should I share the clip now? I have it pulled up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you know how many acres or how much is David's here actually?
He has 600 acres in Australia. It's all one chunk. And actually he will talk more about this later, but I might as well share the image real quick of his property.
Yes.
And
so just to clarify, because if you're like me, I can't think in acres. I can only think in square kilometers or miles. So I'll just do the conversion for you. So 600 acres is about 1 square mile. So 1 mile by 1 mile, or 1.5 kilometers by 1.5 kilometers approximately. So it's 2.25 square kilometers is the approximate area. So that's more familiar to me than acres.
Okay. So this is like, I think that like this is the square mile. This is his property here from above. And you can kind of see there's some rows of trees here. And you also see, look at all this salt here. So he, I don't understand exactly, but he's a little bit in like a valley area, and the salt, you can see like the salt buildup is kind of outside of his property. And he tried to explain the dynamics of the land to me a little bit, and I didn't fully understand it. But he will play a clip later where he talks more about this. And then this is a close-up view of his property. These are some of the eucalyptus trees growing there. And you can see they're doing, they're quite big. They're not, it's not like a dense forest or anything right now, but there's like a lot of trees growing there. Yeah, when you get closer. Christian, should I share should we check out the China wall video?
Yes, please do, and I'll comment on that. It's very interesting. Yes, if you can,
yes,
please do. I
have it right here. Did you want to watch? So this is a video from I guess, innovative techs on YouTube. And yeah, let me just start it from the beginning.
China is rebuilding the Great Wall. However, no longer do they need to build with stones, mortar, sand, and rubble designed to stop the enemy hordes. Nowadays, they build with trees. Just like the wall erected many years ago, the world's largest man-made forest should stop an enemy that China has been fighting for many years, and which is no less dangerous than the problem of overpopulation. This enemy is the desert that occupies most of eastern China and continues to grow non-stop. Although China has an area comparable to that of the United States, only 12% of it is arable land. However, China still has the largest agricultural production in the world. All the usable land is farmed intensively, and the government has invested heavily into both increasing yields and conserving the area. It is incredible that such a populous country managed to become self-sufficient in terms of food supply. A striking example of self-sufficiency
A strong political comment there.
Region in the northwest.
Yes, of course. You would expect that, yes.
Thanks to drip irrigation and technological systems that reduce evaporation.
Yeah, if you want to put the, I don't know if you can put the video on silent, I'll just comment a little bit.
Tomatoes.
Yeah.
So this is so what's very interesting here is the main gist here is, to Gentleman Ghost's comment, is if you look at the area, what they are doing, they are as of 2009 they've planted about 500,000 square kilometers of forest. That's amazing. 500,000. That's compared to David Kennett. I'm not, of course, you can't compare it to China, but just to give you,
right.
A perspective, it's 200,000 times his area, right? What he's doing, 200,000. It's massive here, right? So they started this Green Wall project in 1978, and part of the problem is, I mean, I've been to China and Beijing and so on. You get these desert winds coming in from Mongolia, right, from the Gobi Desert, mainly in the North China. Beijing, a big city, is very much affected. They're trying to stop that, and also to increase their agricultural yield. The main criticism that they're facing is the monoculture, right? They've been very monocultures about it. So just planting one certain type of tree, they've done a tremendous job. But some argue, well, that'll never get diversity and biodiversification that you need to really convert a desert to forest. Nevertheless, it's a tremendous effort.
Yeah, and if you're in an area where a monoculture can work, that can be incredibly useful. So I might stop this at least for now, and I'll play a little clip from our interview with David Kennett, where he actually talks a little bit more about monocultures, in general, and why people. He gives a good description of why people don't like them.
Sure.
Actually, this might be the clip where I saved the wrong clip, but we'll find out. When it comes to plants, at least. So
one of our big problems is we've been growing monoculture crops for years and years and years. And so the crops consistently take the same elements out of the ground. And unless they're replaced in some way, it's difficult to grow anything else as a result. And so this is why the artificial fertilizer business is just so colossal. But with the rising cost of petrol or oil, these artificial fertilizers are just going to become so expensive that people won't be able to use them. So one of the things I demonstrate in Nepal to the students, and they just love this, because most of the children I teach are parents.
Yeah, so that's the end of that clip. But you can hear, it doesn't matter whether it's a monoculture in terms of corn or the same type of tree. Monocultures, the plants have the exact same nutritional requirements. They're pulling the same nutrients out of the soil year after year after year, instead of having a balance where different species add different things to the soil. And so, for example, he also talked about planting different things in combination with each other. So here's what the opposite of monoculture would be.
You plant the corn, and when the corn is up to about 80 centimeters, you then plant the beans, and the beans have got support to climb up. But when they grow the beans as a monoculture, you have to provide supports for them to grow up, which is labor intensive and expensive. But the beans add the nitrogen to the soil. Then on the other side, corn gets attacked by a particular insect. And on the other side, I'd say, what should we plant in order to keep these insects away? And we plant onions or garlic, and the smell of the onions and the garlic keep these pests away. Then on the other side, beyond that a bit further, you plant your brassicas, your cabbage, your broccoli, your cauliflower, etc. And again, the smell of the onions keeps the white butterfly away that attacks these things. And it is so easy, it is so simple. But everybody says, oh, you can do this on a small scale, because in Nepal, where I'm teaching, a lot of the fields that they're planting are on terraces, which are only about 3 meters wide or something like that. And you can't get tractors up into there. It's all done by hand. So it's quite easy to do. So people say, but we can't do this on broadacre. But my father always used to say to me, there is no such word as can't. If we apply ourselves, we can do just about anything. So once this concept is recognized, then the technology will come about. And there's lots of tractors, for argument's sake, like the tractors on my property have wide tires like this, but there's tractors with very narrow tires for use in horticulture, etc. And so they'll be able to go along with GPS steering, so it's absolutely precise. So they can plant the bean seeds in the right place, and the corn seeds in the right place, and the onion seeds, and the cabbage seeds, and whatever. But struggle I have all the time, Giorgia, is to get...
Yeah, so I think, and we'll get to James Bourne's question in just 1 second, but just to give like a visual of what he's talking about here. I mean, this planting different crops together, this is the other bad thing about monocultures. They're depleting the same things out of the soil, but also they're encouraging pests potentially.
Of course.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that I had a picture on this and I don't. Let me actually see if I can.
Maybe in the meantime, whilst you look, maybe Giorgia, you just David Howden's question first. He thought, to me, the word forestry has quite a commercial sense rather than ecological. Do you want to comment on that in this regard?
I think that in the United States, that's true as well. David Howden is in the UK, and so it seems like in both places that is true. And so environmentalists, many like sort of hardcore conservationists don't like the term forestry, but I think that it can be useful to think about this sometimes in as broad of an umbrella context as possible. Like if we can make allies out of people that are into forestry for more commercial reasons as well, and have kind of meet halfway where maybe they're doing forestry, but they're planting more diverse species of trees or something like that. I think that you're absolutely right. It can have purely commercial connotations, but I think that it can also be beneficial for the environment to have forested areas. And that feeds very nicely into, James Bourne's question here.
Yep.
Is the main purpose of planting trees to alter the atmosphere and make it less arid, or something more specific to the effects of fixing the ground? And the answer is it depends. It can be both. It depends on the person doing the reforestation. So certainly it can have broader scale climatic effects, but also the trees can help. The trees can help sort of get rid of excess salt in the soil, for example. And I do have a picture of that. I'll just share my screen again. And so here's a picture of, slideshow from current slide. So this is just a little news bit, pumping groundwater for salinity control in Western Australia. So ultimately the only way to get excess salt out of the soil is to wash it out with water. And I have this picture here of what that would look like with a ground pump, drawing up water from deeper in the ground and then discharging it on top of the ground to wash out the salt. But guess what? Trees have very deep roots, And the tree can take the place of this pump. The tree can bring up water and then help, bring the water up to the surface, either through, they have some transpiration where they let out water through their leaves. The leaves fall to the ground sometimes, and that brings water in. And so here's an example showing just how deep the tree roots can go. This is a cave actually, I don't know where this cave is, but this is an underwater cave. And underground rivers are very common in some areas, including some areas of Australia. And this is showing like the tree roots coming down there. Yeah. Do we have another question? Or could you see the pictures? Was I sharing my screen?
No.
Oh no! Oh
no,
God.
we could not see the picture. I was waiting for it, but no.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, interrupt me when that happens.
That's okay. Don't worry.
I forgot to hit the share button.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
So this was just, this is just showing just an example. Can you see this?
Now we see it. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is just a recent from last year news piece about, pumping groundwater from Australia.
Yes. That's a beautiful one. Yeah, here we go.
I wish this picture had been up while I was talking. But yeah, bringing up water from underground to bring it to the top and then wash out the salt from the soil. But also the tree roots can get all the way down into these underground rivers or just to the water table, to the more saturated, deeper areas of the soil. And those trees, just like this pump, can help bring up, water from deeper down, and that helps with the soil. So that, I hope that answers your question, Gentleman Ghost. Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Where were we? Sorry.
So I have, I think that it is especially challenging to plant trees in these really arid environments. And so sometimes the common, the best practices or the common wisdom of forestry doesn't translate to trying to add trees to these arid places. So there was a couple parts of the interview where I thought that it was talked about very well by our guest. And let me...
Yeah, I also wanted to say that was one of the discussions they had in the Gobi Desert, where they were transforming something like 500,000, it's amazing, square kilometers, about the underground rivers, because some are disputing that and saying, well, that's drawing a lot of water from a monoculture, right? Because it's very much a monoculture, and if that doesn't properly evolve in the way so much water is wasted, and also the underground rivers can be diverted. So all that ecosystem. So it's a very delicate balance. It's not. I think for David Kennett, I think that's his name. It's great because there's so much salt in. So what he's doing there is quite remarkable. I think really remarkable.
Yeah.
But
I will play this clip real quick where he talks a little bit more about the underground.
Okay, go. Yeah.
I forget, this is kind of a long clip. I think it goes through different areas, but it does include some discussion of the underground water sources.
Sure, go.
Yeah. What is the initial state where you are in Australia, like in terms of, was it forested before colonization and then people mostly deforested it, or is it a very arid, deserty area that you're sort of actively converting?
Yeah, well, it's always been a low rainfall region, or this is what we're told. But I don't always believe what we're told. And the reason why I don't believe what we're told is my property stretches across a valley floor. Now, that valley floor is flat. And the reason why it is flat is that in the past, there has been incredible rainfall that has washed down silt to build up silt in these valleys. And so there's been colossal rainfall in the past. But we have a lot of our trees are very susceptible to fire, especially the eucalyptus, etc., which there's eucalyptus grow right across the entire country. Now, we suffer lightning strikes. Mm-hmm. Also, the first people, the Aborigines who lived in Australia, they're ridiculed in some ways, and in other ways they're held up as prime examples. But no, they would use fire to control other fires. So they'd light a fire so it would just be a cool burn, if you like, so it wouldn't be major. but they hadn't got any means of fighting fires if the fires got out of control. Now, the vast centre of Australia is just one big desert, and it's absolutely colossal. But there are trees growing there, but people say, "Oh, we can't grow trees there," but they say can't without even trying. And the Nullarbor Plain is limestone, and you may recall that the young boys, the football team that got trapped in caves in Thailand, the people that rescued those were 2 Australians, and one of them has actually visited my property, and both of them do the diving in caves, etc. And so that's why they volunteered to go over there and rescue these kids. Anyway, they do this diving on the Nullarbor Plain because the Nullarbor Plain has all these caves that are full of water, only a few meters below the surface. So by using the technology that I've developed, which enables trees to be grown in really dry climates, they last long enough for their roots to get down there. So one can identify it's because it's limestone. There are particular eucalyptus that grow in limestone. So this year I've ordered a couple of trays of these trees. It's only 164 trees.
Yeah, and so he talks about, particular types of eucalyptus, and this is just a refresher. This is the tree roots growing in like an underground cave here. But like, for example, I looked up, but then afterwards a little bit. So this red river gum is one type of eucalyptus that is associated with going along rivers, and can also, their roots go very deep and can find underground water, as this figure is showing us. And they can survive years and years with droughts. They can also survive extreme flooding because they have to deal with both extremes. Yeah. So I think it's pretty cool, what goes on in that area.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. And he mentioned also some of his techniques for planting trees in arid areas. Are you interested in hearing more about that, Christian?
Oh, I'm always interested. You talking to the go on, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what I mentioned earlier, where some of what we initially think about how to plant trees doesn't necessarily apply to arid areas, because what he's saying here makes a lot of sense to me. And there is definitely a research bias. A lot of research occurs in North America, Europe, where there's relatively less arid land, I believe. So here's one thing he has learned through his practice planting trees.
Very early on everybody was told that to plant their trees, you take it out of the pot and you plant it level with the surrounding ground. Well, when it's 40 degrees Celsius, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity is about 2%, any moisture in that little root ball, which is only about a couple of inches by a couple of inches, evaporates instantly. So I started planting them really deep, and I planted them in dry soil, and so the dry soil insulates it, and I get 100% survival rate. It's just so simple. It is so logical. But everybody told me, it will not work because you'll get collar rot and you'll get this and you'll get that, and you don't get collar rot. The little tree is just like a cutting, and it just puts out new roots. It is just so wonderful. But
so you've spent a lot of time, it seems like, thinking about. I'm going to pause myself. I don't need to hear myself talk. But yeah, so I mean, we heard him talking there about basically planting trees deeper than is customarily done. And normally when that happens, you worry about getting rot around the trunk, he was saying. But because it's so dry, you don't get the rot. And being deeper, he alluded to later, it helps them reach the underground water that much faster, right? The water is deeper.
Plus he's talking about the insulation, which is very important. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very simple and very smart, I think. Really smart.
Yeah. And I want to say hello. We have a lot of new people joining. Hi, Whitco and James Born Again and David Dunn and Jamie Love. It's just it's great to hear from everybody. How much deeper? I wish that we actually had him here as David Kennett here as a live guest, so we could ask him then. I'm not sure.
Ask him,
Yeah. And please, everyone, like the broadcast wherever you're watching it from. It really gives us encouragement and helps with our motivation for planning new
It does.
topics
It does.
and stuff. Yeah.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other part from that still, Giorgia?
Yeah.
Because what I can do is just jump, whilst you look, let me jump into another quite famous person here.
Okay. Well, I do want to talk about the tree growth rings. Recall
Yes.
that's the one thing.
Yeah,
that
well,
I
okay, you
that
talk
first.
about them, the growth rings. Okay.
Okay. This was, because this links because it's another aspect of tree growth in arid regions or areas where there's a lot of climatic variability that doesn't have to do with the standard seasonal cycles, or maybe the season is more rainy season, dry season than it is fall, summer, winter, etc. So I will share another clip real quick talking about that. And yeah, it ties in with just how forestry practices are
over the years.
different in different areas. So I share my screen again. I'll remember to complete the screen sharing. Okay.
I'll give you an example of one of the failures here in Australia. When white settlement occurred about 200 years ago, but over 220 years ago, the early settlers came here from Britain. And the people were only familiar with deciduous trees that grow in Britain. And as you may know, the typical reason for, or the method that is promoted for determining the age of a tree is when you cut it down, you can count the growth rings in the trunk. Now, a deciduous tree has summer growth, winter dormancy, and so it produces one growth ring per year. So it is logical you cut down those deciduous trees, and that represents the age of the tree when you count the rings. About 3 years after I started planting my trees, I planted them too close together and they started dying, so I started cutting them down. They had produced 20 growth rings per year.
So you're saying more than one growth ring per year.
And the reason is that they're evergreen as opposed to deciduous, and they've evolved to survive in really low rainfall regions. And they do this, they have little valves on their leaves called stomata, and they open and close these valves in response to moisture availability. And so they can slow down their transpiration rate when it's too dry and then open up again. And of course, every time they close down, they seal off one growth ring, and then when it rains again, they open up and they produce another growth ring.
So you're saying that the seasonal cycles in Australia, there's like a bunch of teeny seasonal cycles that result in these more growth rings per year instead of just one big seasonal cycle per year.
It's purely rainfall as opposed to seasonal, because we can go through a summer and it's very dry, but we can get an occasional rainfall event during that period of time, dry weather, and the trees just come to life again and they grow dramatically quickly. It's just, but you can't get. I had two scientists come to my property and I showed them this piece of wood, and I've got a photograph which I'll send you. And I showed it to them. They were husband and wife, and I showed it to them, both highly qualified in forestry. And I said, "How old do you think this tree is?" And there were 40 growth rings on it. And so they looked at it and they said, "Oh, it's got to be 40 years." So I said, "Well, I planted it myself, I cut it down myself, I know it is 2 years old." So they said, "Let's have another look at it." So they looked at it and they said, "Oh, if you look closely, there's only 2 growth rings." And you can see these growth rings. No, you can see them as clear as anything.
Yeah, and so I love that clip because it is, I know the feeling as a biologist who travels, and I work with my bats in the US, and then I travel even just to Puerto Rico, which is a more, a much warmer US territory. And I'm like, oh, these bats are different. They're doing different things. And what he's describing is this phenomenon called, there's some different names for it, but like sometimes you'll hear like false growth rings. I mean, the rings are real, they just don't correspond to an annual ring. And so, so this is just something I pulled offline where it's showing, this middle picture is really amazing to me. It's showing, how clear this false quote unquote band is. I mean, I think David is right in that it's a real band and it's a bit arbitrary whether we just decide to call it a false or a real band or whatever. It's not an annual band though. He's correct. Yeah.
Right. Right.
It's just a very distinct another band. And here's another on the bottom, a distinct band just caused by the tree halting its growth and then restarting it again. Not because it's winter and then spring, but because there's no rain and then suddenly there's rain again. And this is, he alluded to the picture he sent me. This is the picture he sent me of the 2-year-old tree that he cut down. And you can see it's very, very dense, many, many bands, that even though it's just 2 years old. So I thought that was like pretty cool. Yeah.
Very good. Giorgia, let me just jump into a similar topic here. I'm going to just share my screen and explain why we. So this is so I'm referring here to Wikipedia also for copyright reasons. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about a person called Alan Savory. Savory, maybe I'm mispronouncing his name. Sorry, Alan Savory is actually Zimbabwean or from the area of South Africa where he also went to the University of Natal, and he's got a very interesting perspective. So what he's discussing here is a slightly different angle. He's talking about arid grasslands that are just getting worse and worse. And somewhere in the late 60s, there, as far as I understand, there was a nature reserve, and it was just getting drier and drier. And he did some scientific research, and he blamed he found the culprits to be elephants, which he found terrible, right? So he gave it to a scientific committee, so the story goes, and they agreed with him. And as a result, in order to save large grasslands, 40,000 elephants, yes, 40,000 elephants were killed, which is horrendous, right? That was the decision. And he later says that regrets that was the worst decision he's ever made in his life, because subsequently what they found is it did nothing to the area. It was sort of this complete misinterpretation, which happens in science, right? It does, and which devastating. So he was so devastated that he dedicated his life to finding a better solution, and what he came up with was exactly the contrary to what he believed before. And he, in 2013, he gave a TED talk. And by the way, I'll just give you the link here, and you can. I'm just going to put the link in here quickly so you can see that. And the link to the TED talk is also there. I listened to on the way back from the dentist this morning to the TED talk, and I found it very interesting, by the way. And it's so the conclusion that he has in the TED talk, which became very famous, was how to green the desert and reverse climate change, attracted millions of views and was followed by the release of the TED book, The Grazing Revolution. So what he says, there's only one option, I'll repeat to you, the only one option to climatologists and scientists, and that is to do the unthinkable and to use livestock, bunched and moving, as a proxy for former herds and predators and mimic nature. There's no alternative left to mankind. So what he's saying is that's exactly what they did with natural wild stock. He's not talking about commercial wild stock. He's talking about natural wild. So he's very opposed to commercial livestock. That's very different. Natural livestock used to move, especially in Africa, from place to place. They move because of predators, and by naturally bumping the sort of moving the soil with their hooves and also urinating and so on, that would naturally
yeah, and they eat selectively different. It is like cows, for example, they tend to eat like grasses, young grasses, which is very bad. Whereas a lot of native herbivores, they actually prefer like young trees and
exactly.
So the trees, preserves the grassland versus destroying it.
Exactly, Giorgia. So what he did some controlled experiments and proved there that this was indeed something, and has since then he's got his own, in this case, a for-profit organization and so on. You can read about it. However, he's also got a lot of very strong criticism from opponents that say that this wasn't quite valid the way he's done it. There was a lot of rainfall that has caused that, and plus you cannot just do that because the meat industry will love this. Of course, you come here with livestock and say people eat more meat, which cause you can see where the arguments are going, right? So anyway, but I do find, as controversial as he is, he definitely has had a strong influence, and he certainly has made his point here, right?
Yeah, that's very very interesting. And David Kennett also mentioned that grazing, I don't know where exactly the clip is, so otherwise I would look it up, but he mentioned that grazing is very problematic for starting the forest actually as well, because he talked about some of the land near his where they were trying to grow trees. Some livestock or animals came and they ate all the baby trees or something. And so I didn't ask him specifically if he has a fence or something, but he did attribute some of his success to things not eating the baby trees as they were trying to come up.
Yes, and then of course the biggest another argument against what Alan Savory, or I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his name, is that it's not the grasslands that's the problem. It's the deforestation, which is, I put a note down somewhere. I think it is somewhere around 30 million square. Yes, that's correct. 30 million acres per year that are deforested. That's really the big issue, not the grassland and so on. So
that's very interesting. I did want to share, you made me think of something, and we have a question about a lot of people commenting on the growth rings.
Okay.
So like people not knowing that that you could get more than one growth ring per year. And also, I mean, he mentioned evergreen trees for the multiple growth rings, but I think it can happen in deciduous or evergreen trees, depending on just the environmental conditions. And in fact, there is a whole field. There's a field denoted to studying the true and fake growth rings, which is called dendroecology. Is applying tree ring analyses to ecological questions. So like, how wide are the rings? How much rainfall was there? How are there false quote unquote rings? I thought that was very interesting. And here's a screenshot from one of those dendroecology papers. This is actually in northeastern Brazil, but again, it's showing, I believe, this figure B here is showing false growth rings. This is from a paper by Mar, is the first author, MAR. That came out, I believe in 2019. But if you look up like northeastern Brazil, like dendroecology, you can find the paper. So I thought that was very cool. And this, if James Bourne says that was very interesting. If a desert tree only has rainfall every 3 years, I wonder if it would only have one ring. I have something else to say on that. Sorry, I'm full of things to say today. And that's that I actually, as a hobby, I do some woodworking.
Here we go. I didn't know.
Yes.
Another talent of Giorgia.
I have many partially developed talents. But if I want a very strong wood, then I use a tree from the desert. And one of the things that I used very strong wood for was making a guitar pick for an electric guitar. And so this is a picture of a guitar pick I made where this white part is like almost to the bark. Basically, it's the outside, and the whole rest of the tree was just black because it's the wood grows so dense. And so that wood is very strong. David Kennett, he talked about, a lot of people want this wood from Australia because it's so dense, it's heavy, it will sink in water. And the growth rings can be indistinguishable basically sometimes. So I think I'm finally done talking about tree rings. I'm sorry I pulled us back into that.
I have to ask, do you play electric guitar? I think we all want to know now.
I don't play any instruments. I played cello for a little bit when I was younger, but that's why I got into the guitar pick making, because I can't play instruments. I can only participate in music like adjacent to the music.
That's great. So fine. Good.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And thanks. And I see, someone posted a link to the TED Talk. Thank you.
Yeah, that's David Dunn, not someone.
Someone. Yeah, sorry. I can only take in and process so much information at
Okay.
a time.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember if I think there's no other clips that I had
Mhm.
saved from David, or from our guest David. But yeah, so I think that's all I have.
Yeah, that's
Kristen?
fine. I mean, we filled the whole hour now, so
Okay.
I think it's been very interesting, really.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we'll close with some of these other pictures that David was nice enough to share with me.
Oh, I see.
These are some cover crops growing. So, he talked a lot about how herbaceous plants can help put nutrients back in the soil. A lot of people commonly think of nitrogen, and I'm almost directly quoting him now, but I accidentally deleted this clip that he shared. But a lot of people think of just like beans bringing in nitrogen from the air into the soil, but many plants are capable of bringing in different nutrients, whether it's from the air or pulling them up from deeper in the ground. So here are some of the cover crops from his property. And then I think maybe we should end with this picture, which is, well, there's some more. Oh, did I forget? All right, this will be our second to last picture, which is David in Nepal teaching people about using divining rods to find water. He was very enthusiastic about that. And there was another picture.
That I'm always stunned about, Georgia. That's a topic of its own.
Go ahead.
Whether this really works or not. As you know, I'm maybe too skeptical as a scientist, but I've been following this, of course, because I've been in South Africa and many countries, and I've actually had friends who did this too. But I always wondered, is it more their knowledge of it just helps them?
Yeah.
This is my opinion, right? But anyway,
yes,
it works for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think my opinion would be similar too, and I think maybe even it's a shame that I feel bad that David kind of isn't here to speak for himself.
Yeah, of course.
We're kind of like talking. We're like, we don't know about.
No. Look, and I'm not. I don't want to shoot him down. Look, if that. I
think he's certainly aware that many people are skeptical.
I know.
But I think he would agree with us that it's in some way tapping into our intuition about the world.
Yeah, look, he knows the area very well. Okay, and he sees everything. He sees small changes that we don't see, and I think it helps him focus. That's how I interpret.
Yes.
So
and it's a shame that that we're at the end now, and it kind of he did talk a lot of he has a lot of very deeply held spiritual beliefs about the ability of like the divining rod to kind of connect you to the broader world, right. or he would say God specifically, but I think it's different how different people would define that. But I think human intuition is very powerful.
Yes.
Yes, and and this is a closing picture of him in Nepal, where he mentioned several times in the interview where he's gone and done some work there.
Beautiful work, really amazing.
So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your comments and participating. We loved hearing from all of you, and thank you sort of belatedly to David Kennett for sharing his knowledge of trees with us.
Yes.
And and he's associated with Aurea. Auria is the name of his project. Okay.
And do we know what we have next week already, Georgia? I'm not putting you on the spot. Because I don't know. I have to check.
I don't know either. Yeah, I do not know. It's a surprise, everybody. I believe. I could look. We do have a schedule that we came up with.
What's his name's name?
Oh, okay. We do have someone. Yes,
okay,
we have a potential. We have a potential someone, which is Dr. Sambu Paudel, ecological niche between Arizonal and Ganges River dolphin. Okay, so the note. Sorry, we have someone helping us now with the scheduling. But we have a confirmation for the interview, and we think that it will be next week, but we're not sure when. But we might be talking about dolphins next week. That's pretty darn cool.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Christian's like, really? What do you mean?
Okay. Great.
Yay. Don't hate me if it's not actually dolphins next week. I do what I can. Okay. Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Okay, bye, everyone. And thank you so much for participating.
I know. Okay, we have a final. Sorry, what's this man's name, please?
I put it there, David Kennett. I put it.
Okay, maybe we should just close. I'll write it on the PowerPoint presentation because I want to make sure everyone has.
Well, look, I will give the. I'm going to put the link into the in there, and you can There's the link about. Okay, his page, and there's his name also and explained.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
I'm sure dolphin sounds good.
You can see.
Now you got it.
Okay. They saw me writing it up there with all my typos and everything. Yes. Yay, dolphins. We hope so.
Very nice to see you, Sean, by the way.
Thank you.
Very nice. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for all your positive participation and all the questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. See you next